So it's been about a week, and The Flash has officially bombed at the box office, and I thought it's a good time to do a spoiler review and to talk about the film because I saw it on opening weekend, and as the credits rolled, I thought to myself, that was okay. And then it took me a whole 10 minutes to think more, like as I was walking out the theater and I was in the car, and I thought to myself, actually, that was a pretty mediocre superhero movie and a very disappointing Flash movie, in my opinion. First thing that I want to get just straight out of the way is Ezra Miller. Listen, Ezra Miller, I don't condone, what Ezra Miller did, all the crimes, pretty bad stuff. Every single video, every single review that talks about this movie, when they talk about Ezra Miller or talk about the movie, has to start like this. The positive is the two Barry Allens kind of colliding together. There's a younger version of Barry Allen and kind of an older version of Barry Allen. And there's a pretty good duo. And Ezra Miller, I guess, has a pretty good chemistry with themselves. It's two Barry Allens, leads to some funny stuff, which leads me to one more positive, is that this movie is actually pretty funny at times. There's some good bits in it. The visuals in this movie are horrendous at times, like awful. Now, before I went to go see this movie, I read just a few hours before I went to go see this movie, I was reading online that Andy Muschietti, who's the director of this movie, said that, the CGI is supposed to be bad because Barry, when he moves fast, the way he sees the world, and that's why everybody on screen looks plasticky or bad. And I thought to myself, that's a funny excuse for, making your CGI bad, I guess, right? That's funny, Andy. Okay, we believe you, sure. And then I went to go see the movie, and I was watching the movie. There were so many bad CGI shots that I thought to myself, oh, maybe it was on purpose, because there's no way that so many of this stuff could be that bad. Wow. Maybe it actually was on purpose. I mean, everything from, the opening sequence that was really ridiculous of Barry saving babies in the sky, saving plastic fake babies up in the sky, to when he's in the Speed Force. When he's in the Speed Force, or when he's in that time council or whatever, right, changing time, the CGI on a lot of stuff. We saw shirtless Henry Cavill that looked awful. We saw a bunch of different cameos. I'll get to the cameos in a little bit, okay? But all the cameos in the third act looked really bad because we brought some people back from the dead and we did some other things like that. There was a lot of pretty bad shots. And that third act in the desert, there was some bad shots there as well. I think the best actually CGI is when it has to do with Batman action, with Michael Keaton's Batman and Ben Affleck's Batman in the first act. Which is funny because after this movie, Andy got the keys to DCEU's new Batman movie, The Brave and the Bold. James Gunn liked this movie so much that he was like, hey Andy, come direct this Batman movie for me. And to me personally, on that side note on that, I thought to myself, I'm not going to think much of it because I watched the first two It movies. The first It movie is pretty good. The second one is way too long and overstuffed. I was like, I'm going to judge Andy on this Flash movie after I see it. And then I watched the Flash movie and I was like, ooh, okay. Kind of worried about the Batman movie now. But some of the best parts of the movie, in terms of action and everything, were Batman related. So maybe Andy just is a big fan of Batman and he kind of just doesn't really care about the Flash. The narrative is all over the place. It's a mess. It's a mess of a narrative. I could excuse the bad CGI if the narrative was good. I heard some people say that they actually liked that they excused the bad CGI because they liked the narrative. I thought the narrative was pretty messy. Now, they did do the Flashpoint story, which I'm going to tell you right now, I've seen this story done better in two other mediums. I'm a pretty big fan of The Flash character, and the Flash TV show. I was a fan of the Flash TV show for 4 seasons. The 5th season is where they lost me. The 5th season was never able to grab me, and that's when I checked out. Season 1 probably being the best, Season 2 being really good, Season 3 being pretty good, and Season 3 is, I believe, when they did the Flashpoint story. And then Season 4 with The Thinker, I actually did enjoy, and then after that, again, they lost me. But fan of the Flash TV show. Last year, I also watched the animated Flashpoint. It's like a Justice League Flashpoint movie. It's on HBO Max if you want to check it out, or Max now, I guess. I watched that, and that one was pretty good too. So I've seen this Flashpoint story done twice. Both times have been better than this movie. One of the issues narratively is that I think this movie also moves at a really fast pace. Ironically, I know Flash movie moving at a really fast pace. Specifically when Barry first travels back in time and now he's in a new reality and he sees his mom and his mom's alive and his dad as well. You know, his dad's not in prison and he's happy. And that's when I thought to myself that this movie could have chilled a little bit with them, because remember, his whole motivation is to go back in time to save his mom so he could spend time with his mom and, you know, his dad and his family being together. But in this movie, he travels back in time, he sees his mom, he sees his dad, they're all happy. He has one lunch with them, and then they're off on the adventure. I really didn't feel the emotional impact that I felt like this movie wanted me to feel with his relationship to his mom. I felt like the movie was more like, hey, you have a mom, right? Barry Allen also has a mom, so you can relate to that. That's pretty much, we're hoping that you get that. Yeah, and when he has to pretty much let her die by, you know, the tomato can soup thing, it was okay. I just wanted it to be more of an emotional impact than it was. The Flash TV show, season 1, maybe even season 2, forgive me if I don't remember exactly when it was, but season 1 specifically was like really based on like who killed Nora Allen back in the day, right? It's a very supernatural event that happened back when Barry was a kid. And Barry's dad was framed for killing his mom, right? And then, as far as I know, now listen, I don't read comics, but as far as I know, Barry's story is that, again, Nora Allen's death is a very supernatural event. You see, what's funny to me is that I know that's the story, right? I know that supposedly Nora Allen dies to the Reverse Flash and Barry was supposedly there, you know what I mean? But in this movie, here's the funny thing, right? So the movie starts and they're trying to get Barry's dad out of jail because he was wrongfully accused of killing his mom, right? That's the whole point. And at the end of the movie, they succeed. They get him out of prison. But I'm also wondering, okay, so Barry's dad's not out of prison. Is nobody in this universe wondering how Nora Allen died? Not a single person raised that question of like, hey, so if his dad is innocent, how did his mom die? His mom was stabbed in her kitchen in broad daylight in her own house. Was just stabbed. Did she stab herself, are we gonna say? Now I know from watching other Flash things that it's supposed to be like Reverse Flash, right? It's supposed to be this whole event. But this movie never really dives into that, and I thought that's funny, and I was wondering how the general audience would perceive that. Maybe that's me overthinking, maybe the general audience just didn't even think about that, but again, they free his dad out of prison, but okay, now who killed his mom? Are we ever gonna like hint at that or address that? Barry doesn't even a single time ask that question. He never goes, I know my dad's innocent, but hey, who actually killed my mom if my dad's innocent? How did she get stabbed while I was upstairs in the house and she was stabbed downstairs in the kitchen? I thought about that. The movie never even hinted at addressing that. And I just thought that was really funny that like did she just stab herself in the kitchen? Now, one of the major things I want to talk about is the cameos, which were for a lot of people the selling point of this movie, specifically Michael Keaton's Batman. Now with cameos, I just want to say that studios, for me personally, I blew my entire load on cameos back in December of 2021. Listen, seeing 3 Spider-Men on screen together, 3 Spider-Men that I grew up with. After that, I've been thinking to myself that there is no cameo that I will ever be as excited for as seeing 3 Spider-Men on screen together. Michael Keaton's Batman was a selling point for a lot of people to go see this movie. For me personally, yes, I've seen those movies back when I was a kid, but I didn't grow up with them. Christian Bale is my Batman. That's who I grew up with. Michael Keaton's Batman, he was never really a huge selling point for me. I was really looking forward to seeing a good Flash story, and I don't care about the Michael Keaton Batman cameo. And speaking of No Way Home, we should show some more respect to No Way Home, because this movie is what we were afraid No Way Home might be before we saw No Way Home. Remember all those memes? Remember how many rumors there were about who could show up in No Way Home? And then people made memes about it. People made like movie posters with a bunch of different characters. Well, this Flashpoint movie, this Flash movie, is what people thought No Way Home would be and were scared that No Way Home would be. And Michael Keaton's Batman is actually what we were afraid they might do with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Michael Keaton's Batman has 2 lines in this movie that don't feel organic at all. They're just said because he said them in the previous stuff, and he said, I'm Batman, because, you know, he said that previously, and that's the iconic line. But in terms of where they place it in the script and in the movie, it just feels out of place. It's not placed organically. Like the two Barry Allens that he's talking to, they already know he's Batman. And just all of a sudden he goes, I'm Batman. It's like, yeah, we know that. Who are you saying that to? And then the other line that felt really unnatural is when they're about to go to that final battle and they're like, hey, are you in? And he just goes, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Yeah, I get it. It's the thing that you said from the previous thing, but it just doesn't feel organic. They just told you to say it because they're like, hey, audience are gonna be like, hey, yeah, look at that. But on Michael Keaton's Batman, had some pretty cool action sequences. Better action sequences than the Flash himself had in this movie. So other huge player in this movie is Supergirl, and for me personally, Supergirl didn't feel like much of a character. She felt more like a punching bag. Her and Zod, because they're intertwined, right? So Zod is, I guess, one of the villains in this movie. One of the questions that walking out of this movie, I felt to myself was like, who is the villain of this movie? Because Zod is like barely, and then there's like a Savitar or like a bad version of Barry Flash. He's barely also in this movie as the villain. Who is the actual villain? I dare you to say Time. Say Time, please. Say Time's the villain. Yeah, they save Supergirl. She says like 2 lines. She puts on her suit. She looks good in that suit. Ooh, hot. I like the suit, right? And then she goes and fights Zod and punches some shit. Zod was funny in this movie for the fact that as soon as Michael Shannon could start talking about this movie, now this was a week before the movie actually came out to the public, there were interviews of him just crapping on multiverse movies and saying how unhappy he was in being in this movie and just how much he doesn't care about multiverse movies. I believe he said something about like these multiverse movies are like people just smashing their action figures together. And that's what the General Zod and Supergirl, that's what they were in this movie. They were just like, just punching, just superhero action. And walking out of the movie, I was like, oh, I see what Michael Shannon meant. Because he was really underutilized in this movie. If this wasn't General Zod from Man of Steel, if we didn't have Man of Steel General Zod, people would be shitting on this General Zod. People would be like, what the fuck was that? This is like one of the worst, most useless villains ever. He does kind of nothing in this movie. I never felt like he was much of a character. I never felt like Supergirl was much of a character. And yeah, those are 2 big players that, again, I was disappointed with. And the last dump of cameos that were kind of laughable to look at is at the end when they're in that speed council again, and, you know, younger Barry is obsessed with changing time, which I thought was a kind of a cool concept, the way they did it, actually. He's obsessed with changing the time, and he keeps going, and he starts to turn into, I think it's Savitar. I'm pretty sure it's Savitar. If this is Savitar, again, I just think the Flash TV show did a much better job at this Savitar storyline. But yeah, so then all the multiverses start colliding, and we see a bunch of different cameos from Nicolas Cage, Superman. He looks plasticky. They brought back Christopher Reeves from the grave, and a bunch of other people from the graves. Which I personally think is messed up. They shouldn't be doing that. I don't know why they did that. People in my theater were cheering. I found that really kind of disturbing that they did that personally. I'm not really a fan of that. There was one Flash in the whole thing. This is a Flash movie, right? So you think like if we're gonna see a bunch of different multiverses, we would at least get a glimpse of a bunch of different Flashes. There was one old-timey Flash that for like a week nobody could figure out who that was. One Flash, and Grant Gustin, who plays the Flash in the TV show, never got a cameo in this movie. That is so disappointing, man. You couldn't give the guy a cameo in this movie, like just kind of running around in one of the universes. That's so ass, man. Pay some respect to the guy. He played Flash for like 10 years. He's personally, right now, he's my Flash. I grew up with him, right? Watched 4 seasons of him. I think he's great. I wish if they were planning to replace Ezra Miller that they would give Grant a chance at the big screen. But doesn't look like they even care about him, which is really disappointing. At the end of it all, sacrificing a good Flash story for the DC multiverse stuff is all for nothing. Because if you remember, the reason that they went with a Flashpoint story as the first Flash movie is because they wanted an excuse to reset the entire DCEU, right? But then the ending comes. And in the end, which is also kind of confusing because Barry seemed to have learned his lesson of being like, okay, I can't change the past, gotta let my mom die, right? He took the can of tomatoes out. But then he still changed something right away. So it was confusing as to like, hold on, did he learn his lesson? He didn't learn his lesson because he changed things. He did a 180 completely again. And that leads into George Clooney's Batman coming out of the car and completely erasing Ben Affleck from existence, I guess. And I have a huge problem with the ending because the movie just ends after that with no real answer to anything. I had so many questions of like, wait, hold on, so what does that mean? Is Barry now in this new universe? Is this new universe now our universe that we're going to be in? Is George Clooney now our Batman? Is he going to be there again? Like, what does that mean? In Brave and the Bold, it's supposed to be an older Batman taking care of Robin. Is the older Batman going to be George Clooney? What does that mean? I actually kind of like the idea of giving George Clooney a redemption arc because George Clooney's Batman movies came out in like the 90s when people weren't really taking superhero movies too seriously. They thought they could make very silly superhero movies. So his Batman movies were very silly. But George Clooney's a good actor. So maybe if you get James Gunn on the script or somebody else in modern day superhero writer, potentially someone who knows how to utilize George Clooney, we could get a pretty cool Batman, maybe? Just a pitch out there. George Clooney's not a bad actor, man. This film was supposed to reset the DCEU, and then it didn't, or it did very confusingly. Also, you should know that there was 3 different endings to this movie. The one that we got with George Clooney, the one that's in theaters now. But they did film another one, and there's behind-the-scenes pictures of it. You can go check it out. Where in the courtroom scene, there's the Flash, Michael Keaton's Batman, and Supergirl is in that scene as well. There's actually a shot in the trailer where Supergirl is at the courthouse, and they just never used that ending. And then there's also a third ending where Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, and Henry Cavill's Superman was supposed to be. I don't think they ever shot that. But they did shoot the Michael Keaton and Supergirl being at the courthouse scene. That's real, because the whole plan was when Michael Keaton came back, they were like, Michael Keaton's going to be our DCU Batman once we reset everything. But then, I guess when James Gunn came in, because all these plans were here before James Gunn took over. I guess once James Gunn took over, and once Ezra Miller went on their crime spree, they were just kind of like, we can't follow through with that, so let's erase all of it, and let's have this goofy ending with George Clooney where people can laugh a little bit, with no real answers to anything. Again, is this the universe that we're in now? Is George Clooney, are we ever going to see him again? Or is this ending just for LOLs? The movie had the audacity to have a post-credit scene where Barry is hanging out with Arthur, Aquaman, Jason Momoa's one. And again, that leads into, again, more questions of like, what does that mean? Is George Clooney out there somewhere while you guys are getting drunk? Is he the Batman? Is Ben Affleck erased from existence? What does it all mean? And the answer to that is, only James Gunn knows. Can we somehow find a way to move on past this? Like, we've been stuck in this cycle of Henry Cavill's Superman, Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, Ben Affleck's Batman, Ezra Miller's Flash. Like, we've been stuck with these people in a cycle, and we keep going, we keep revisiting that cycle. But can we just have a hard reboot? You don't need a Flash to be like, we're going to reboot everything. No, just start. Just start fresh. Just be like, no, we're done with that. We're not even going to try to salvage any of that. We're done. We're going to start fresh. Just do it. Just please do it. That's the best way to go. Stop confusing people and stop trying to leave hope in this broken universe that you have. James, just hard reset. Just restart everything. I'm also really disappointed because this Flash movie took forever to make. I mean, this was announced, back in 2014, and now 2023, and we're finally here. I'm disappointed because, well, the Flash TV show ended. Not like that I've watched all the last seasons, but now I need more Flash content, and I don't think I'm going to get any for quite a while. James Gunn hasn't announced any Flash things that he's working on. And I like the Flash. I'm very disappointed that I might not see him again for quite a while. So yeah, that was me rambling on about the Flash. Let me know down in the comments, what did you think about the Flash? Were you happy with it? Were you disappointed with it? Did you just think it was kind of mid? Let me know all of that down in the comments. I would love to have a discussion with you about that. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.